So this past week, we talked about two different types of measures. The first one was the measures of central tendency, which I call the measures of center. So the measures of center, basically all it basically told you what exactly does the data look kind of in the center of the distribution. And the way that we can describe it is using either the mean, the median, and the mode. We looked at the pros and cons between the mean and the median, and which one was sensitive to outliers and which one was not very sensitive. Then we also talked about the measures of variation. So it tells you how each data point is varied from the mean. So, for example, the range, we saw that it was not very useful, but the standard deviation was very useful in terms of describing the variation, because what it did, it told me where the sample mean was, X bar, and then I was able to look at each data point and calculate kind of the average distance from each data point to the mean, and that gave us a standard deviation. And if you had a very large standard deviation, that meant that all the data points are very, very spread apart. And if you had a kind of small standard deviation, all the data points are kind of close together. Okay, so this last type of measure is what we're going to call the measure of location. And basically what the measure of location does, it's just a measure of where a data value stands relative to the distribution of the whole data set. So if I chose one number, so if I had like the number 7, 8, 20, 14, 15, 12, I don't know, 9, whatever. If I just choose one number, like 14, where does 14 lie in relation to all of the data? Okay. And a way that I can describe it is using either a percentile or a quartile, and a z-score. And z-scores actually are very, very important, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So a percentile, all a percentile is just a number that divides the bottom p% of the data from the top 100 minus p%. So for example, let's say I gave you, I don't know, the 30th percentile. If I said the number, I don't know, 12 was the 30th percentile. I don't think that's right, but let's say that was the 30th percentile. So what does that mean? So if I had this number 12, right? Okay, what that means, this being the 30th percentile means that 30% below this number 12, it is so 30% of the data is under this number 12, okay, and 70% of the data is above it. That's where this 100 minus p stands for. So this number 12, it being the 30th percentile, means that 30% of the data is right below it, and the other 70% of the data is right above it. Okay, that's basically all it is. And with percentiles, we're actually not going to talk about them too much, and we're not going to calculate percentiles much until we get later to probability. So this one will be put on hold for a while. The one that I really want to emphasize is these quartiles. So quartiles, you definitely need to know what these are. And basically what quartiles do, they separate your data into fourths. So basically, let's say here is all of my data from the smallest. So let's say this is x min, the minimum value. This is your maximum value. Well, what it does, the quartiles separate the data into 4 equal parts. So they look kind of like this. So the middle one is what we're going to call my second quartile, and we're going to call this Q2. This one is what we're going to call Q1, and then this other one we're going to call it Q3. So basically what it does, it separates everything so that 25% of the data is in each location. So this is what we call the first quartile, the second quartile, and the third quartile. So let me write that down. Q1 is first quartile. Q2 is the second quartile. And Q3 is going to be the third quartile. Now, if I were to write them in terms of percentiles, well, if I look at the first quartile, the first one has 25% of the data right below it. And when we know that if there's a bottom p%, that's what we're going to call the percentile. So actually, the first quartile is actually the 25th percentile. This one will be what? Well, 25 and 25, that gives me 50th percentile. This will be the 75th percentile. Okay. And also something to note is that the second quartile, since it separates the bottom 25% from the top 25%, this is actually the median, right? It makes sense for the 50th percentile and the second quartile to be the median because it's right in the middle. Okay, so how do we find these quartiles? So in order for us to find them, you first have to arrange your data from lowest to highest. Then we're going to find the mean. Find the median. This is going to be the second quartile. Then divide the order data into two halves. If the observations are odd, exclude the median in both halves. And then find the median of both halves. Bottom median will be Q1 and top median will be Q3. So let me do an example because this kind of seems a little weird, but let's do this example. So this says we want to find the quartiles given this data. So the first thing that we want to do is arrange the data. Okay, so let me go ahead and arrange it. So the first one is going to be a 1. Then we're going to have another 1. Then we're going to have a 2. We're going to have another 2. Then 2 3s, 2 4s, and a 5. Okay. Right, and the first thing that we want to do is we want to find the median, and this is going to be Q2. So the median is going to be just the numbers in the middle. So it's going to be which one? Let me see. The median will be this one. So Q2 is actually going to be the median, and this is going to give me 3. So that's the answer. Now what we're going to do, we're going to divide the data into two halves. So notice that the number of observations is odd, okay? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9. 9 is an odd number. So we're going to exclude the median in both halves. So we're going to exclude this. I'm not going to include it. And now this is going to be my bottom half. And this is going to be my top half. So we're going to have 1, 1, 2, 2. And then we're going to have 3, 4, 4, 5. Okay. So now let's find the median here. So the median here is going to be the number between 1 and 2. So I can find the mean of this. All right. And this is going to give me 1.5. So Q1 here is going to be 1.5. And then we're going to find the median between these numbers. And well, the median between 4 and 4 is just going to be 4. So Q3 will just be 4. Okay, and that's basically how you find the quartiles in a numerical fashion, in a much more by hand. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to use the calculator using the graphing calculator. It's literally the same handout that I handed out this past week. So just follow along based on those steps.